Hello, gorgeous souls. Welcome to the Her Drive podcast. This is a female focused interview series where I get to talk with amazing women with a whole host of backgrounds from business to spirituality, sensuality. The gamut is very broad. And today we're going to be focusing on business. And our guest is Tiffany Rosik. She's the founder and CEO of TGR Management Consulting, a powerhouse at the intersection of innovation and transformation. After years of delivering groundbreaking results in the tech industry, Tiffany now advises Fortune 1000 companies on aligning their business and technology initiatives to drive real results. But her impact doesn't stop there. She is also the author of That's Not the Help I Need: Real Talk for Women About Winning at Work. And I'm really excited to dive into this particular subject that the book is mentioning, and hopefully we'll get some insight on how women can overcome challenges and really harness certain strategies to help them really step forward in the workplace and feel a sense of nourishment, satisfaction, and groundedness. So without further ado, hi Tiffany, welcome to Her Drive.
Well, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Yes, my divine pleasure. So, Tiffany, before we dive into all that you do, which sounds super fascinating, I would love to really get an introduction to who you are, maybe the genesis of your story as far as what's led you to where you are now.
Well, that could be a really long story, so I'm going to try to
Mhm.
keep it brief.
Mhm.
So I am originally from the Chicago area. I am now living in San Diego. I've been out here for about 20 years. I've had the opportunity to work for a number of companies across the country. Um, so from a professional perspective, I really honed my skills as a project manager doing what I would call project rescue. So these are technology projects that are years behind schedule, could be millions over budget, that just aren't going well. And I had any opportunity in my career to I came to kind of a fork in the road, and I made a decision. I could continue and go down a corporate path, or I could step away and create my own opportunities. And so in 2017, I was at that fork in the road, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna try and do this on my own. I feel like I've got some opportunity. I think there's a need for this niche skill, and I've been building a small boutique consulting company doing those exact things for other companies.
That's so interesting to me when people meet that crossroads. And I'm curious, when you reached that point, what was the ultimate deciding factor or factors that led to starting your own firm?
There were a couple of them, right? We always say that there's it's never one thing. I was working for a consulting company, another consulting company at the time. And if you're not familiar with the consulting space, typically consultants are working at least 50 hours a week. They could involve heavy travel, but generally speaking, my role didn't involve heavy travel. It just was a significant amount of time. My kids were grade school. There was a lot of mom guilt about being able to really participate in their lives. And the company that I was working for had made a decision about the role I was in, and they didn't want to move forward with it. So I was building a new line of business for them. And they made a choice that was really about them. And I don't have any hard feelings about it, but they didn't feel that that was where they wanted to invest their time. They didn't want to pursue that line of business any longer. They offered me another opportunity in another part of the business, which I didn't know anything about. And I kind of had to sit down with myself and go, okay, could I learn? Absolutely. Would it take me a long time to kind of get there? It was like I was starting over, right? I needed to learn things. I needed to meet people. Um, and, um, and I chose not to do that. I wasn't in the right space with, personal life to take on a new mountain to climb professionally. So having said that, I just decided that I was going to make a decision that was about me. So I took my skills and I kind of moved it over and decided to climb a different mountain that I believe would give me a greater sense of joy and purpose and excitement professionally and personally.
Beautiful. I love all of that. And I love that you made a choice for yourself, especially as not only a working human, but also as a mother. I am not a mother, but I have a sister to four kids, and I witness the amount of energy and effort she and other mothers that I know really give out to everyone else. And they don't make a lot of time for choices that are going to be better for them. So I
Totally
applaud
agree.
you. Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, at what point did you start to turn your attention towards these subjects that are within your book? And can we dive into a bit of what is really in there after kind of sharing how you were illuminated into this space?
Sure. I do a lot of mentoring, and mentoring of women. They just whether you're seeking a board seat, I just have always enjoyed that mentoring aspect. I'm not a professional coach by any stretch, but I found over the years that it's a lot of the same stories, a lot of the same questions, and I found myself having a lot of similar conversations, offering similar advice. And I had gotten to a point where I was recounting a story to a group of friends, and I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna write a book, and this is going in my book." And I apparently had said that statement enough times that one woman one night called me out and said, "So when are you gonna stop talking about this book you're gonna write and actually write the book?"
Yeah.
So a few glasses of wine later, I was like, "Yes, that's it. I'm in. I'm writing this book." And so it's been it was probably about an 18-month journey that I was on from the time I said, "Yeah, you know what? I'm doing it. I'm writing the book. I'm going to stop talking about it. I'm going to do it," to getting to being published. And um a- again, these are things that I learned along the way, some of the mistakes that I made, so I learned the hard way, but all of it is stuff that I wish I knew. These are the conversations I wish I was able to have, that I had a person that would sit me down over a cup of coffee or glass of wine and say, "Look, here's how it really is, and this is what you need to do."
Mhm. Interesting. Well, congratulations on being called forward and answering the call from your friend. I feel like so many of us say we're going to do things, right? And we've got to take action. And I applaud you for doing that. So, yeah, let's dive in if you care to share. Like, what are the things how is it really, and what do we need to know?
Sure. Sure. So I've taken a series of stories from my personal career, and I've tried to format the chapters into what I call the 4 R's. So in every scenario, there's a risk that you're taking, there's rejection that you could be met with, right? And there's some resilience around how you meet that rejection. And then usually you've got to take a step back and you've got to reset and replan and come up with it. But the chapters are all organized around common themes that I see. So dealing with challenging people in the workplace, challenging managers. There's a number of different management styles. So we talk about how you can work with each one of those styles and how you need to frame it, some words you can use to help you get past and overcome that. I also talk a lot about being opportunistic in the workplace. Like, that's not a dirty word, but a lot of women don't frame, think of themselves as opportunities come up. And I'll give you a great example where this happens a lot. Somebody in your company leaves. Your manager comes over, knocks on your door and says, "Hey, Jeff's leaving. I'd love it
Mhm.
if you could take on some of Jeff's responsibilities." Most of us sit there and go, "Sure, no problem." And then we grumble later behind the scenes about how much work it is and we're adding to our plates and we're not getting paid anymore.
Yep.
But in that moment, it is okay, and I'll say this again, it is okay to say, "Hey, that sounds really interesting. Some of the work that Jeff was doing, it does sound interesting, but let's talk about that more. I'd like to understand more about what Jeff does and how much time it was taking him and what's really involved." And you set that boundary and kind of give yourself that time out, that space, so that behind the scenes, you can go and sit down and write down all the things that you're doing today. And then if you add in all that other work that they're asking you to do, you can be opportunistic to say, okay, if I'm taking on 25% more work, do I get 25% more pay? Oh, I don't? Okay. Then let's talk about what 25% of the work that I'm doing today that we're going to give to somebody else. Right? And you're strategically looking at that work going, what of this work do I really want to do? What makes it better for me? What am I getting excited about? What moves my career forward? And what work are you just giving me because you're just giving it to me?
Yeah. Yeah. How powerful just that one exercise alone, right? Of taking that pause and giving yourself time to really advocate for what you truly want or even ask the question. But I feel like I'm definitely one of those people or have been one of those people. I'm like, yeah, sure, I can do it without thinking. And then later, it's like, oh, wait, I've already committed. But do you think if someone's already committed, if there's room to renegotiate?
Oh, absolutely. And I
Mm,
don't think we do it enough. So think of these as a series of conversations and not just a one-off.
yeah.
So here's how I would frame that situation. I would say, "Hey, you know what? I stepped up and I helped the company out when Jeff left urgently. But as I'm getting into this, there's a lot more time invested. There are some other skills here that I think we need. Let's re- let's lay this out." And and you're doing that over time. So you're talking to your manager going, "Okay, I can't I'm spending, X number of hours doing these activities. Is there somebody else we can move this to? Can we
Yeah.
automate it? Can we do something else?" And kind of and have and engage them in the conversation to help you alleviate that. Or, right, if they're like, "No, there's really nobody else." Okay, let's talk about how I can move forward and leverage these skills to that next position that I want.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. That makes perfect sense to me. So, with that being said, what else do you think others need to do? Simple little tweaks that they can make in the way in which they communicate with their managers or team members.
Mhm. Well, I think there's a lot of reading the room. And in a virtual world, and, if you're not in an office, it's even harder to read the Zoom room, if you will. But taking note of different cues that people are giving you, whether it is, body language, positioning, talking with their hands, right? There's a lot of reading behaviors and how they respond to your emails. That's another great one. How many words
Oh,
are they using? How long are they? Are they super detailed, right? Paying attention to those kind of things and then looking at them going, all right, this person is sending me a lot of words. They are probably highly concerned about me not doing something or me not understanding something. So maybe I need to pick up the phone and talk to them instead.
that's really brilliant. I've never thought much about the amount of wording. Are there any other types of phrasing that might be a flag to pay attention to?
Not specifically. I think in email, there's a lot of ways in which we misinterpret the words people are using.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I would just caution around reading too much into words. And if you see certain phrases, is it really them being curt, or is that just how they phrase things?
Sure. Sure. I think that's really beautifully stated. And, I keep referencing back to myself, but I do that because when I think about the world at large, and if I'm trying to understand something that might have me confused or not fully understanding, I reference back to my own behaviors and patterns. And what I've recognized is in my text messages and in my emails, I'm very short. I don't like typing things. I'm more of an orator. I'd rather talk.
Yeah.
So when people see me or they communicate with me through audio or video or in person, very animated, super pleasant and lovely, but my messages come across cold. So once I identified that, I've had to then make the conscious choice to, depending upon the urgency of the message or email, uh, place little markers in there so people know that I'm not just being, to use your word, curt. So that sounds like something that others might be mindful of too. as they're communicating with their colleagues and managers, etc. And in that kind of similar vein, how does like communication outside of the workplace impact how people show up at work? Is there any type of like world skills that you think can be learned and then applied in the workplace relatively easily to lead to greater success?
I think being honest and transparent up front with your expectations around communication outside of the workplace is
Mm,
where we all need to go, and where I would love to see people be more transparent around. Um, I'll give you a good example. If you are a parent, it's likely that between the hours of 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. in your time zone, those are untouchable times because you've got family situation, things that you're doing at home. But that's not to say you're dismissing someone who's trying to reach you urgently at work or trying to get an answer to their questions. It just means that you're going to come back at 9 o'clock. And
yeah.
so if I know that about communicating with you, or if I know that you are in a different time zone, so one of the things that I get to do as a consultant is I get to work with different people all over the world. It's helpful for me to know what their working hours are so that then I frame my communication to them at a time when I'm more likely to reach them. I'd like to see more transparency around that, because I think as we got into this digital world and social media and where everything's always on,
Yeah.
the assumption is that everybody's always on. Well,
Right.
that's not true. We're not always on.
Yeah. Yeah. Fully. Well, I appreciate the compassion and understanding of you trying to know when everyone else's working hours are. But I'm curious to challenge that
Mhm.
of perhaps, yes, you can kind of map that. Some of us have a greater capacity for that, whereas others don't. But I feel like for people who are a little bit more insecure in their attachment style or rushed to get answers and not so self-aware of where other people might be, it might be more of an internal work of understanding that a person will get to the work, to the answer, to the whatever it might be within the time frame of their working, without you having to fully understand the working hours of everyone else. To me, that seems like a little bit more of an easeful approach. But for those who really want to track the working hours of others, especially if they're in your position and they're working with people globally, is there some sort of tool that one could use to better track that, or what would you recommend so that they could be fully conscious and aware, so they're not sending that email, we'll say at like 10 o'clock at night at someone's, someone's getting ready to go to bed, but the person who's receiving the email, which I've seen in many of my friends, they're like, oh, I've got to answer this email right now. Like how can that balance out where we're not creating stress and urgency in a space and time for someone who might be more inclined?
Yeah. I don't have a fancy tool. I wish I did. If somebody in your audience knows of one, let's
Yeah.
share that.
Hmm.
What I have found, so somebody used to do this to me, and I've actually adopted it myself, is I put right up in the subject of my email, or in the first line, something like "No response required." I'm
Mm.
just telling you about this. I don't need you to respond, or no immediate action needed. Right? I've come up with these couple of phrases. So no response required, um, no immediate action needed. If there's action needed, I've asked them if they could respond within a time.
Ah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that seems extremely brilliant, especially if you're placing in the subject line, and that allows for people to be a bit more easeful. Because we all are all super connected, and for those who are parents, how and they may not be taking that 4 or 5 hour window to
Mhm.
just be in their family time. Do you think that there's ways in which they could start to set boundaries first within themselves, and then to slowly build those boundaries or quickly build them up for those who they work with?
So, so women, what I've noticed, women like to work through their lunch hour, and I'm guilty of this too. What I found, particularly in the tech industry, is Men don't work during the lunch hour. You could pretty much guarantee that every day at noon that they will go be somewhere for lunch. They will not be at their desk. And I
Mhm.
actually think that that is the first step that a lot of us need to take in setting a boundary. To say, I, I'm not going to work through my lunch hour. I at noon, I'm going to get up and whatever it is I'm going to do, I'm going to do that for me. And that is a perfectly acceptable boundary that women should be setting and sticking to
Yeah.
that doesn't impact anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there's something within the mindset, right? And maybe you could have identified that. Like, why are women doing this and men are not?
I think there's a lot of logistics, like mental logistics that we're doing. And so here's how I'll speak for myself. Here's how I kind of rationalize my eating my through my lunch. Well, if I can take this 30 minutes and couple it with eating, then I can spend another 30 minutes doing something else. Maybe it's scheduling that doctor appointment. Maybe it's maybe it's finishing up a different project. Maybe it's making a phone call. Right? There's ways in which I rationalize why I'm not going to get up from my desk that day and have some lunch.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I fully understand. There's so many days like you it is like 13 hours I've just sat there, you know.
Yeah.
Right. And then does that apply as well towards the evening too? Do you think most men when they're done they leave work, they leave it at work?
Um, I think that's changing. At one point, I do think I had some statistics that talk specifically about some of the different working hours that women versus men do. I do think that that is changing. Again, the digital society that we're in is driving that forward. But I come back to if you do any reading or studying of the habits of successful people, they all tell you that they carve out time for themselves. Most often, they carve it out first thing in the morning because they can control the morning. They can't control the night. And
Yeah.
so if you do any reading about it, they'll say, "Look, I've already set aside 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. That's my time." And everybody does it a little bit differently. But that would be the advice that I would give to people is, okay, find that time and maybe start 30 minutes that you are going to take just for yourself to do something that's important to you. Meditate, walk, read the newspaper, have a cup of coffee that's not in front of a computer screen, right? Whatever that is.
Yeah. Yeah. So you just heard me take a huge deep breath, that moment of like ease, right?
For me,
Mm-hmm.
it's walking my dog. I walk my dog every morning, and I do not bring my phone.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm truly unreachable for the 45 minutes that I'm at the end of his leash.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's brilliant. And something that I wanted to ask you. So thank you for intuitively answering it. And there is some magic in not having the telephone with you, right? Yeah. I bet that feels amazing. There's no temptation to look at the phone, to connect in any way, and you can be fully present within the moment with your pooch. Beautiful. Do you have any other like rituals or practices beyond your daily walk that help you come into that sense of center that's just for you?
Great question. I'm a competitive person. I grew up playing sports, so for me, not working out on a daily basis, not having that kind of endorphin kick, there's a little bit of a withdrawal. So I do try to squeeze in a workout, and again, I'm not in the gym for an hour and a half. You will not see that is not the kind of time that I have to spend at doing this anymore. So quick run, could be a yoga session, right? Where you're just coming to the mat, could be lifting weights, but there's something there that I'm carving out and is actually is exactly 25 minutes. I give myself 25 minutes to hit it hard and then I'm done.
Yeah.
I gotta go.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm there with you, Tiffany. Like I am definitely an action-oriented individual, and movement of any sort is so helpful for me. So I love that you're in there. You got your 25 minutes, and that's a non-negotiable. How brilliant! And I know that you've written this wonderful book to aid others in giving them the advice that you wish that you had received or things that you had known. But I'm curious, with all of this being known and kind of expressed already, if you could go back in time and give a younger you some words of wisdom, what age would you go to, and what specifically would you say?
I was extremely fortunate to have some great mentors along the way, and I know that's not true for everybody. I would go back to about 25, somewhere between that first and second job out of college, and, um, I would tell my impatient self to just be more patient, to when things didn't go my way, when things blew up at work or whatever it was, to just take a deep breath, wait 24 hours, and if in 24 hours it was still a big deal, I was still emotionally charged around it, then
Mm,
I could take some action.
uh-huh. Yeah. So was younger Tiffany a little bit more fiery?
Yes, and patience is something that I've had to practice over the years. It
Yeah.
kind of goes
Yeah.
back to that competitive drive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which, I think that's a blessing in so many ways, and I'm sure it served you. Um, but it can also, cause some challenges as well. How
Absolutely.
magnificent. Well, I'm also curious. I know we've talked about the book a little bit now, but I think it just sounds like such an amazing resource. Is there anything else in there that you think is a key point that you would love for the listeners to really dive into and see as a point of value to, of course, acquire your book and fully expand on all that you're sharing?
Sure. So there's a couple chapters where I talk about performance reviews as well as understanding pay raises and how to position yourself going forward. So I'll briefly share a lesson that I learned in writing performance reviews, and this kind of leads to being opportunistic and how you position yourself for what it is that you want to do next. Um, a lot of us sit through these meetings, these company meetings where some company leaders reviewing the strategic goals, whether it's for the year before. And if we're all being honest with ourselves, most of us zone out during those meetings because they're incredibly dry and boring. And if you're looking at those strategic goals, most often you look at them and you're like, yeah, that's not me. I'm not in sales, or if I'm not in the C-suite, I can't control spending in some way. And I would coach you to say, print those goals out, pin them up on your dartboard somewhere near your monitor. Because if you don't know how your role and how the activities that you're doing fits into those strategic goals for the company, your manager doesn't and the company doesn't. So when the company's looking at things like um, uh, performance, pay raises, merit increases, promotions, even layoffs, if they don't know how you fit in there, and you're not telling them every year in your performance review, right? You're not
Mhm.
tying that stuff back. Um, you're missing the opportunity to position yourself for success and continue to move in the direction that you want to move in. And now, not everybody's cut out for management. Not everybody wants to be a manager. But again, it comes back to you and your path and how do you position yourself for what you want next.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds so brilliant because to be just fully conscious of where they're at, you're seeing it visually every day. That would, to me, be a trigger in my actions each day. I'm constantly filtering. And while people are having that mental exercise, do you recommend that they take note of how they fit within? So when they do have their annual review, that they can talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And those words should, and that should be a direct correlation when you're writing out what your goals are or what you achieved this year in that performance review. And knowing that also, I think, leads to that conversation or helps that conversation we talked about earlier, where someone's asking you to take on responsibilities, and it's part of the rebuttal. Oh, so if I take on these things, how does that help this goal, or does it fit into the company's strategic goals?
Mhm.
And if it
Yeah.
doesn't, right, it allows you to sort of intelligently challenge
Yeah.
why you're being asked to take on something that isn't part of the top 5 priorities of the company.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. I love that. And you had referenced companies considering layoffs, and we haven't talked about the downside of employment
Yeah.
sometimes, which is the layoff. So, do you have any words of wisdom around how one might be able to manage that?
I do. As a matter of fact, I have a whole chapter in the book on it. I've personally been laid off twice. The first time I never saw it coming. I was really young in my career, never saw it coming. And the second time I was able to position for it. I did see it coming. I saw the warning signs and was able to position for it both financially as well as emotionally. Uh, and I think the first thing to keep in mind is the company is typically making a decision that is not about you. So if you end up on that list, there was probably nothing you could do to change it to begin with. So, um, even though it's incredibly confidence shaking to be laid off, don't take it personally, right? You just need to recognize that you have value and then start taking the next steps from there. I think the other thing to consider too is you've been given an opportunity to think about all the things that you were doing that you didn't enjoy about that job. And now you can think about all the things you would enjoy in a new job and
Yeah.
and move towards and make your move that way.
Yeah. That sounds magical and beautiful to me, to really just shift the mindset around what's happening, right? Rather than fighting it and going into victim mentality, like step into victor role. What's next and bigger, brighter for me? Absolutely. Are there? What are some signs that you can identify that someone might be able to clock that a layoff is coming?
Um, again, paying attention in those company report outs. If you see usually 2 or 3 quarters consecutively of missed goals, company-wide
Mm-hmm.
missed goals, that's usually a pretty good indicator. A shift in leadership. So if there's a lot of movement at the top, likely they're trying to reconcile a shortfall somewhere, and there'll be a larger realignment happening. Um, another if your company is continually not replacing individuals, so again, we talked about Jeff leaving. If Jeff leaves, but Sally left, Mike left, Judy left, and none of their roles were backfilled, there's probably some cash strapped there, and they're operating intentionally at a skeleton crew.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Well, Tiffany, I love what you've shared with us today and would like to just open up the floor for you to touch on anything that we've missed that's on your heart that you think the audience absolutely must know right now.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the sort of the open door. Um, I would leave people with 3 questions that they really should be asking themselves as they think about 2025 and how they're moving forward in 2025. And the first one being, you know, why not me? Why shouldn't I go get that job that I want? Why shouldn't I have this other thing? Why shouldn't I be more financially successful? Um, the second one would be, if not now, then when? Because sometimes we make excuses, or we have these reasons why we were not promoted, or we didn't go for that job, or we didn't apply for a new role, but they're really excuses. So continually asking yourself, if not now, then when, I think kind of keeps that in front of you, where you're like, okay, well, is that an excuse or is that really a reason?
Right.
Um, and then, the last one is, um, oh, forgive me, I have just drawn a mental blank now as I was talking through that.
Yeah.
um, if not me, then who? Right? Sometimes we tell ourselves, um, oh, that's not me. That's not for me. That job, I don't like that job. And okay, well, If you don't think you're the right fit for it, then who is?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I see this a lot when women want to go for that upper level. They want to go director, VP, C-suite. I'm like, well, I don't know if that's me. Again, why not you?
Yeah. Well, why do you think that they say, I don't know if that's me?
I don't know if your show's long enough to dive into that one.
Oh, we've got time.
uh,
Yeah.
uh, I think it's a confidence, right?
Yeah.
It could be come back to not knowing your own strengths, not knowing your own value,
Mm-hmm.
not knowing why your strengths are so much better than that other person's strengths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that sounds like a simple way to reduce it down. Absolutely. Well, I love this conversation. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for being here. And if you don't mind, let everyone know where they can find you, find your work, your book, etc.
Sure. So the best place to find the book is actually on Amazon. You can search the book "That's Not the Help I Need" and it should come up. You can also follow me on Instagram, Tiffany Rosik, and professionally, if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, I'm active professionally on LinkedIn. And again, trying to keep it simple for everybody, just Tiffany Rosik.
Amazing. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in to this episode of Her Drive. And thanks again, Tiffany, for being a wonderful guest with so much information that I think so many of the listeners are going to be able to hear themselves in, or a version of themselves in the past, and potentially pass this along to those who might need to hear it. And for my guests, I always thank you for tuning in and invite you to share the episode with anyone who you think this would truly land with. And as always, if you leave a review, that truly helps other people find the show. Love you all.